Welcome to the Production Expert podcast. I'm Ashea, and in this edition, I'm joined by Matt Lawrence. Matt is a Grammy Award-winning mixer, producer, and engineer who's worked on some of the most influential records of the past 20 years. And it's going to be a two-parter because we had such a long, fun chat. So here goes.
This podcast is sponsored by Genelec. If you've ever been disappointed with the way your mixes sound on other playback systems, then check out Genelec's Unio monitoring ecosystem. By providing a seamless bridge between loudspeaker and headphone monitoring, Unio allows you to quickly create great-sounding mixes that translate consistently wherever you choose to work. No more guesswork, no more surprises. Just truthful, accurate audio monitoring from stereo to immersive. To find out more, visit genelec.com/Unio, spelled UNIO. Your mixes will thank you for it.
Welcome, Matt, to the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on. So to begin with, could you tell our listeners a bit about who you are and how you got into this dreaded mess that is the audio industry?
Wow. Yeah. Well, my name is Matt Lawrence. I think the tag is producer, mixer, engineer. I produce records, I mix records, and I engineer records. The job title of engineer is semi-disappearing, it seems, but we can get into that later on.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into this because I obviously, like all of us, loved music. I was in bands. I'd actually tried to open a studio in our school. I tried to sort of collate a lot of the music kit, the 4-track, etc., into a room that I knew wasn't being used, but was met with complete stonewalling. And I was in bands, and I was always the guy doing the PA. I was quite interested in the technical side of it. So I kind of, from an early day, knew that was something that interested me. I think also my performance skill on the guitar and vocals were not really up to being that side of the glass as well. And I made my peace with that quite early on and was very happy.
How early on?
I'd mentioned this story once before. The moment I knew to let go of the guitar was when I was an assistant engineer on a Paul Weller record with Brendan Lynch, and they asked me to sound check this guitar, and Paul was stood next to me and I had his guitar, and I was sort of thinking, really? You sure? No. And he watched me just really appallingly play this guitar for him. And it was the long hours that you do in studios as well. I just kind of left the performance side of it for a few years and focused on the technical side. So, I mean, I think it's quite common for a few engineers when they go through that assistant time where you're working all the hours. I mean, it's ridiculous, some of the hours you have to do. So there's no time left for going home and playing. I think I've spoken to a few people who have been through the same. I mean, you get to a point where, now I'm my own boss. So the hours are usually what I say they are. So I'm much freer. But now I have a family, so that impacts my time in other ways. So there's no time to go home and noodle on a guitar.
Yeah.
That just happens occasionally in the studio.
And I imagine that's made you the specialist that you are as well. That's another topic that maybe we can discuss as well, the sort of specialist side of things, whether it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was chatting to a friend about this just this morning, and specializing is, I think, less common because I think the skill set is now much broader. I think it needs to be broader. The variety of work that happens, and we're going to end up touching on this, but the budgets are so different now. Mm-hmm. And you also worry, is it just me that's getting these budgets? But no, I've really chatted to a lot of people, and so many records are made outside of the label system. And then if they connect or if they get a following, they're funded by the artist or the manager, they might then be picked up by the label.
Yes.
But I believe it's much less common for the label to be booking the session and making the record. I don't know if that's by design or just how the world has moved.
It's certainly what I've seen, how the industry's moved, and because of social media and just the way that artists are discovered these days. I don't think it's not great, is it, for those?
I think it's really hard. I feel terrible for new artists coming through because that new to middle, well, for the new artists, it's there's no definite route to being signed or to market or to whatever. Everybody, they have to be very inventive. They have to do their own thing. They have to make a buzz about them and get a following, and then maybe they'll attract a manager, or they have a manager. But a label is very good. Then seen them. They can just cynically look through the numbers in about 6 seconds. They'll click on various parts of streaming and then they'll look at how that has translated through the different social media platforms as well. So you haven't just pumped money into Facebook or Instagram. They believe if it's a true groundswell of interest, that it will exist on other platforms as well.
Absolutely.
So it's very hard to fake it. And is it outsourcing the A&R to the general public? Probably it is. But there's less money in the industry now, I think. There's more things to spend money on, gaming and whatever else. So yeah, that new to middling artist, it's hard for them to gain traction. And what's another story I just heard about Los Campesinos? They did 10 million streams. I think there was an article in The Guardian. They got 32 grand between them for 10 million streams. And at 10 million, you think you're doing pretty well.
Yeah,
but if you've got to split that with people, it's certainly not a London living wage.
No, and this is the thing, and we're in a sort of strange time. It's a sort of transition time where we don't know quite where it's heading. But it could well, these things have a way of, resolving, and other ways of getting better income, and, things will pop up and new roles will pop up, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's the idea. But just going back to that point quickly before we move on, when I speak to artists as well, I think a lot of, new artists as well, they have this romantic idea of back in the day where they'd get discovered by a record label and they wouldn't have to do the sort of very unglamorous job of posting on social media and doing cringe things, and but they have to do it these days. So in a way, it's sort of you have to be able to put yourself out there and enjoy doing it, and also it's part of the creative mind as well. You have to adapt to the times, and there's always ways of doing things as an artist. It doesn't necessarily mean just taking selfies all day or just, pictures of your food. You can do really creative, cool things online these days, particularly.
Really creative, yeah.
If you are creative and you are an artist, I think you'll find a way of, creating stuff, putting stuff out there, making a buzz about you, as it were.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity. I think one should see it as an opportunity. It's like making a music video. I always hated the boring, just washed out stage thing. Those that were able to be really creative on a low budget really did well. And I think it's the same now. How do you capture people's attention? It's an extension of your art beyond the music.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now that's not for every musician, unfortunately. So it's changed things. But there was one I came across recently. We're in this world where you suddenly discover something and they've got millions of viewers and the whole world seems to have known about it, but we exist in these little microclimates now.
Yeah.
And I discovered somebody by accident because this chap was talking about potato recipes in a really thick Irish accent. Apologies if this is a really well-known artist. I thought it was hysterical. And I sent his video to an Irish mate of mine, an engineer. And then I watched a couple more videos and sure enough, he's an artist. And this was his shtick. And he's doing really well.
That's great.
I must find out his name.
The Production Expert Podcast is made possible using the new Source Nexus suite from Source Elements, the professional way to collaborate over the internet, along with high-definition, low-latency audio and video. Need to record an interview or a podcast, or collaborate with others for songwriting, review and approval, remote editing, and more. With Source Nexus Suite, using any browser, you'll get studio-quality audio and video, along with custom-built tools for seamless integration with your DAW. Pricing starts at free. Get your account today at sourceelements.com.
And that's the thing. There's loads of sort of microclimates, as you say. I think did you say microclimates?
I think so. I was thinking it anyway, if I didn't say it.
There are loads of little microclimates where you can have sort of medium success or even a lot of success. And half the world, most of the world doesn't know that you even exist, like you say.
I'm glad. Yeah. I mean, this gets onto my thing that anyone who's worked with me has heard me talk about this. they should never have gotten rid of Top of the Pops.
No.
I don't know if that's your ear. Like, it was this benchmark against which we measured everything.
Yes.
And you could watch it with your grandma, and it could have, like, somebody said, feels the Nephilim into the Birdie song. It was just so eclectic.
Yeah.
But you kind of knew that was the landscape against which you measured where you were, or how indie this was, or how whatever this was. And we've lost that mainstream barometer. So there's all these, like, universes that you suddenly discover they're massive and you had no idea. It wasn't in your echo chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is, like, I do reminisce about the, because I rewatched Top of the Pops episodes, because who doesn't love Top of the Pops?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's even, like, the Girls Aloud era and, you know, like the early noughties and stuff. It was just, there's something really exciting about knowing who's number one, who are the hot people of the moment, and then going out and buying a record as well. It's just, that was really exciting. It's kind of like the Blockbuster thing as well, you know. It's like we've got Netflix these days, and half the time I scroll through Netflix and then end up just going onto YouTube because I'm bored of trying to choose, you know.
But also, your Netflix looks different to my Netflix, and now my Spotify looks different to your Spotify. It's they're telling me what I might like to discover. Well, how do you know? You know, there's no actual discovery going on now because you're being told what you want to discover and shoved that way.
Yeah.
So the Top of the Pops was the one thing that was everybody's feed that was the same, and we don't have that in life anymore, I think.
But also, like, we're you know, there is that sort of romantic aspect of the past, which was great, and obviously things were more condensed, but also it's probably better because more people get to experience success, and there's more it's more diverse as well
now.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think there was, when I was sort of a teenager and up to, I don't know what age, up to 19, in bands, it was, you know, I was very like indie guitar, that was my thing. And that's what you liked. But now people's playlists are so eclectic that you might jump from Beyonce to, I don't know, just, it's all over the place, and people pull those influences into their records. Records are, I think, perhaps more eclectic. People jump between styles from one album to the next, I think, more than they ever did.
I personally quite like that. I think it's exciting because it opens things up, and it's not kind of putting people into boxes and genres and stifling creativity. It's kind of opening up the possibilities.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you could do whatever you want to do these days. Reinvent yourself with each record, and many people do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose we could get into a day in the life, but also just how that kind of ties into your work as a mix engineer, and how that's changed from back in the day where you were working at Metropolis, and because you worked in the traditional sense of the music industry where they had huge budgets and things were much more sort of, you know, ordered. And so, yeah, just tell us a bit about the day in the life of Matt Lawrence.
Well, I could compare a day in the life, say, at Metropolis. You know, you would turn up, and there's a ceremony about sessions back then because there was a budget, there was a team. So you would turn up and you'd walk into this amazing building, and the receptionist would give you some notes or some messages. You know, you might have a few people. At some point I was chief engineer there, so there was often questions from people on the way to the studio, maybe grab a coffee, maybe even some breakfast, and then you walk into the session and it's all on, everything's on, the assistant has gotten everything ready, maybe is even, if it's a new mix, put some cues into the computer, you know, got some faders up even, depending on who it was, and you kind of hit the ground running, and you felt part of a team. There maybe there was an assistant, a mix engineer, a producer, maybe the artist there, because that's certainly less common. I know I harked back to probably assistant days even before that, where it was me as the assistant engineer, or tape op, as it were, because it was tape. There'd be an engineer, there'd be a programmer with all the kind of samplers and everything done on MIDI with a timecode feed. There'd be the producer. There might be a couple of other people as well. It was it was a very social thing. And when, I don't know, you'll know this from mixing. If you might mix something on your own, but when you invite somebody else into the room and you play it to them, they don't even need to open their mouth for you to suddenly hear that mix entirely differently.
Yeah.
We don't really have a word for it, and we should invent it on this podcast, right? But
you should.
There's something that happens, and you hear it through their ears, and that, I find that really useful. I loved that about Metropolis, where all the assistants and engineers, if you were working on something on your own, you'd say, "Oh, mate, come and have a listen to this," and they might give you commentary or feedback, but sometimes they only just needed to have been in the room.
Is it because obviously the stakes are higher when other people are listening to your mix? And obviously there's a sort of, now I have an audience, now this is the real deal. It's not just me and my head. And so it kind of maybe puts you in a position where you're more critical of the perspective side of things.
Yeah, I think you zoom out. A neuroscientist would have a field day with this. You suddenly zoom out, you suddenly hear it in a very different way, and it's impossible. I've tried to kind of mimic that on my own. It's an impossible thing. And I'm like most people now, I'm in a complex of studios, which is really great. I'm very lucky, but I'm trying to instigate people coming in to have a listen if I'm not sure before I send it off, because there's always something to change. And I'm aware I've gotten off the topic of the day in the life.
No,
so
I'm actually just writing that down because that's such a good point, and I really want to get back to that point about zooming out in the perspective, because that's really good.
This podcast is sponsored by Genelec. If you've ever been disappointed with the way your mixes sound on other playback systems, then check out Genelec's Unio monitoring ecosystem. By providing a seamless bridge between loudspeaker and headphone monitoring, Unio allows you to quickly create great-sounding mixes that translate consistently wherever you choose to work. No more guesswork, no more surprises. Just truthful, accurate audio monitoring from stereo to immersive. To find out more, visit genelec.com/Unio, spelled UNIO. Your mixes will thank you for it.
Okay.
But yeah, just let's go through the day in the life and how that's changed
So,
in them.
well, yeah, the Metropolis day in the life was, turning up. There's all that sort of team, and a lot of it's done for you. The drudgery of worrying about any technical problem. There was a tech support team. There was an assistant first and foremost who would, if it really wasn't working, you call in the maintenance engineer. I didn't need to care.
That's bliss, isn't it?
At all about any technical stuff. I mean, I did, and I knew about it. I don't like talking about the technical side in a creative situation, but I can really go there if required. But I really try not to, unless it's required. But staying away from that drudgery, or if something's not working and it looks like it's a bit terminal, you could say, look, I'm going to go, I haven't had lunch yet. I'm going to walk down the Chisholm Road. Yep. I'm going to go to Gale's and have some, I'm going to have some lunch. You fix that and I'll be back. Give me a call when it's fixed, which was, I didn't realize how much of a luxury that was. And there I was like rumping off, oh, it's not working. That was a luxury. And we'd have lunch. There was a restaurant within the studio, so we'd have dinner. Maybe the artist would be there, all of us round a table, very collaborative. Having dinner together, by the way, I think is super important.
Yeah.
It was my first sort of SSL studio was a residential called the Wool Hall, which was Tears for Fears, then Van Morrison bought it. And if anyone who knows Van or has worked with him knows that dinner is very, very important to Van. And it is in a residential. And that break where you all sit together and have food and have a break from the music, you might talk about it, often not. And then you go back in and have the first listen after dinner.
Yeah.
It's an amazing listen, that one. It's a really great one. Like, what did we get? Okay, let's see. Really good perspective.
First of all, you've had food, which really helps, doesn't it? Always.
Yeah, definitely. Everything sounds better after a good meal.
And you've obviously had that bonding. You've got to know each other more. You've had a good laugh. You've taken a break, and you can go back to it with perspective, and everything just better, and everyone's more gelled, and
and they feel much more able to speak freely about something. Oh yeah, that bit is niggling me or whatever. Whereas now, a day in the life now is me rocking up. Luckily, I'm a studio not too far from my home, so I could either cycle or take various different routes here to stop boredom. But I kind of turn up and open my studio door, turn the alarm off, open the door, turn the lights on. So, okay, I've got to go and turn the Mac on. I turn all these power conditioners on, and it's all me doing all this stuff, starting up the computer, loading up Pro Tools. And I think the first time I started to do that when I got away from a big studio, it felt a bit miserable. It's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this. This is the assistant's job, but obviously get over yourself. And, absolutely. Now you do everything. Now we're all... I bet you know an awful lot more about computers and IT than you ever thought you would, right? Software revisions.
Exactly, and I don't want to have to know. Honestly.
Don't want that in your head.
No, not at all. In fact, nothing makes me more nervous, and I'm glad you say it, than getting it, because I love just, being in a session with a client and coming up with song ideas and recording and harmonies and all that stuff. And I want to have that in the forefront of my mind when I go into a session, as I'm sure you do. And not will it work? Are the cables going to be set up properly? Am I going to have to embarrass myself because the artist is sitting there and I don't know what's going on because there's an error, some technical error?
Absolutely. It's terrible. Actually, because of that feeling you just talked about, I mean, I go out of my way to make sure it's really prepared.
Yeah.
I want it. I absolutely want to make sure it's definitely working before the artist is anywhere near it. I can't remember who first told me this, but some kind of big shot producer said, when that artist walks up to that mic, it had better be on. Like, it had absolutely better be on, because that's their first connection with you. As a singer, that when you're out in the booth there can be this disconnect.
Yes.
And you don't want that. So as soon as they go up to a mic that isn't on, you get this micro disconnect, and then it continues, and then they get a bit of feedback, and then they hear a click and a crackle, and then some latency.
Yep.
It shouldn't be.
And it pulls you out of the zone.
It pulls you completely out of the zone. So I think actually doing an early days of Van was brilliant for that, because when Van walks into that studio, it had better be rolling. Like, the tape had better be in record.
Yeah.
Because he might just walk up to that mic and start singing. And you have to have it.
And you want to capture that moment as well. You can't just say, oh, that wasn't working, but that was a brilliant take. Well done.
Another one that I can wax lyrical over. You have to capture the first take, because something will come. And I've said this before, even if it's not right, there'll be an idea that they'll just try quickly and then forget. So you have to show them their idea the first time, and they can sort of do it properly, as it were. Has to be in record.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And sometimes it's the first idea that's the best idea, and you can't quite capture it. Maybe there's like a little ad lib or something they do. And it's like, that sounded so good.
Absolutely. Before they've engaged their brain.
Exactly.
Before their kind of ruler has come over and told them this. The first ad lib, as you said. Yeah. Actually, just to hammer that one home, I remember Chuck Ainsley came into Metropolis, was doing a Rolling Stones thing, and Mick was about to do a vocal. They'd set up a vocal mic. And he said, I'm just going to go and check this mic. I'm going to walk in there and do it myself, because I just want to check everything's okay. And I don't think I was on the session. I was thinking, because it was him, I was just welcoming him and making sure everything was going all right. And he said, just drop in.
Yeah.
And sure enough, something was happening. We dropped into record, and something in his headphones changed. And he'd noticed some nuance of how this session was set up with the Prism interface going from input to... He'd noticed something went out of phase and disappeared a bit. And had he not gone in and done that, he wouldn't have spotted that. And Mick would have been like, not best pleased, or just not performing correctly. Yeah. And that one stayed with me. I always physically go and listen to the headphones myself, because I want to know also that the tape which shows where the faders for the monitoring, that it's legible, that it's on properly, that the limiter isn't on the headphone box. Just sit there for a moment, be the artist for 5 seconds, and you'll spot something that you think, oh, I'll just move that. That'll be nicer for them when they come here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really worth doing.
The Production Expert Podcast is made possible using the new Source Nexus suite from Source Elements, the professional way to collaborate over the internet, along with high-definition, low-latency audio and video. Need to record an interview or a podcast, or collaborate with others for songwriting, review and approval, remote editing, and more. With Source Nexus Suite, using any browser, you'll get studio-quality audio and video, along with custom-built tools for seamless integration with your DAW. Pricing starts at free. Get your account today at sourceelements.com.
So practically speaking, it means getting to the studio earlier than you would ordinarily to...
Oh my gosh, the rolling in, it has to be checked. So if it's an orchestral thing, obviously if it's an orchestra, it has to be done the night before. I love having it set up the night before. I don't want to set up a band that morning. It's just so stressful. It's so nice knowing it's there. It's all set up. Yeah, being prepped. Somebody, I remember a big pop, I won't name names too much, but a huge pop act was flying from Germany.
Ooh.
This was at Metropolis, and they just finished a gig. They were flying in, they had a couple of hours, and this assistant had not set up the vocal mic until they just walked. So basically, they'd come all the way from Germany.
Right.
They walked up to the mic, and it wasn't working. And you sort of think, that's not a good look.
Is it? No.
It's not a great look. So I like, certainly, even if it's just the vocal, if it's a sort of an artist coming in, I want to hear that working the hour before they're here.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can go and have a nice lunch. But let's not have that nice lunch and then set the mic up 5 minutes before they come.
That's the worst idea ever, yeah. I mean, can you imagine having a great lunch and then the rest of the afternoon is just completely ruined?
Absolutely. The day becomes so stressful if you start on the back foot. The rest of the day, like if you're late to the session as an engineer or as an assistant, I've only been late twice, and they were both jaw-droppingly stupid sessions to have been late for whatever reason. And you're just on the back foot all day.
Mm-hmm.
And it might just have been 5 minutes. You could have got there 5 minutes earlier.
Not to mention stressed and sweaty and all sorts of terrible things.
The calmness, if you're prepared, you're so much calmer. And it comes across, whether you're mixing, producing, engineering.
Absolutely. I think you referred to the fact that the artist isn't in the studio anywhere near as much as they were.
Really not, no.
How does that affect things?
Each artist and each session is a bit different, but they're often not in the country anymore, are they? Technology has meant this is possible.
Yeah.
The band might be now living in different continents. That is not unheard of. It definitely affects things. I think the days of, say, the Metropolis model or the big analog desk format where you would mix for the day and you would finish the mix at 1 o'clock in the morning, you'd be printing the master. But the important thing is that everybody who had creative sign-off on that was present. So it was done.
Yeah.
Anybody who needed to have an opinion had been there because they kind of had to be. We all knew that a recall meant booking a studio again for the day. It was quite expensive, Yeah. How much do you want to turn that hi-hat down? It's going to cost you $2,000. Suddenly, so people focused more. I find when you're sending files around, people, you suddenly hear people say, oh yeah, I know I was listening on these crappy headphones, or this, oh, I haven't got my proper speakers. I'll just have a listen on this crappy stereo. And you sort of think, all right, because you're in the countryside somewhere, but you're not, you're supposed to be judging this mix.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for, but make sure you check back next week for part 2. Have a great week.